There's no wind. That's why I can talk to you without having any microphone. We're in Paignton on the south coast of England. Off in that direction, way over there, is Torquay. This is where one of the most famous places where people come for, well, they come just to see and to look and to swim on the sea. And back here is where we've been for the night, and we're going to be heading back up into the Dartmoors, up into that area. Fawlty Towers was filmed in this area, and that's where it took place. John Cleese, those of you who remember. Now, what we're doing, we were heading into this whole problem of whether or not this book here, the Quran, is a universal book that had universal application for everybody, for everyone, everywhere, and at every time. And we're zeroing in on two areas specifically to answer that question. The first area we're looking at is what the Quran does with women. In Brazil, there at the Iguazu Falls, as you remember, I went through chapter 4 of the Quran, and I also went through chapter 2. Now we're gonna, and we looked at some of the inequalities concerning marriage, concerning divorce, concerning death, concerning the equality in front of court, and also we looked at how men were to treat their wives concerning beating them in chapter 4, verse 34. And they were difficult to go through, and I'm sure for those of you who watched, especially if you're women, you did not like what you heard. But then it's not me saying it, it's not Muslims saying it, it's the Quran saying it. That's why we're always going back to the Quran to ask these questions. Now I'm going to head to Surah 55 and Surah 56. And it's fascinating because here at the end of life, you then get into what's going to happen concerning paradise, what's waiting for them in paradise. There is a famous hadith that refers to this in Al-Bukhari about paradise, and he mentions there that he was given a vision of paradise and he was also given a vision of hell. And when he looked at paradise, he noticed that the majority of those in paradise were men, and when he was given a vision of hell, the majority of those in hell were women. And when asked why is it the majority of women are in hell and not in paradise, his response was because women are more disobedient and also women are less intelligent. Now, I don't know how you women feel about that, but I know that possibly in the 7th century that could have been the case. The fact that they were not permitted to be educated, they had to stay in the home at all times, and so it would seem to anybody who was observing from outside that they could be less intelligent. But that's certainly not the case today, where women are pretty much, not always, but certainly there is an attempt to have equality between the sexes. And so when you look at schooling, for instance, when it comes to standardized tests here in the UK, I'm in the UK, this is the southern coast of the UK. In the UK at least, girls in high school age perform better in every subject than the boys. And by the time you get into university, the number of graduates who graduate in the universities here in the United Kingdom, there are more female graduates than there are male graduates. So certainly in the 21st century, that hadith makes no sense. It does not fit to reality that we see today. Just again, another example of how the Quran and the traditions in this case do not fit reality. They're not relevant for today. That would not be something that would be relevant for today. But let's get back to the Quran, and we're going to paradise now. We're looking at paradise. Here's another boat that's about ready to go out to sea. Looks like that they're training them. They don't look all that accomplished, but this is the place you can do that and get away with it. Now let's go back to the Quran, because the Quran is the book that supposedly Muslims believe is eternal. It's never been created. This is the book that they believe was sent down to Muhammad between 610 and 632 AD, and they believe it was then finally compiled at the time of Uthman in 652 and has never changed. So this is the foundation for all Muslims everywhere at every time. And because of that, we're zeroing in on it because we want to see whether this is relevant. It's a perfectly good question to ask. Let's go in chapter 55, because this is, and chapter 56. These are the two chapters that refer to paradise, that refer to what we would know as heaven. And in chapter 55, let's start with 55, verse 39. Chapter 55, verse 39. So on that day, no question will be asked of man or jinni as to his sin This is on the day of judgment. From their faces either white, dwellers of paradise, true believers of Islamic monotheism, or black, dwellers of hell, polytheistic disbelievers and criminals. Fascinating that it even starts to talk about paradise concerning who are those who are going to heaven and who are those who are going to hell. Those who are going to heaven are going to have white faces. Those who are going to hell are going to have black faces. The mujrimun, it says, those are the polytheists, will be known by their marks, and in parentheses it has here black faces. So even the Dr. Muhammad Taqi Uddin al-Hilali and Dr. Muhammad Musin Khan believe that these marks will either be black or white face. How you deal with that, I don't know how those who are listening feel about that, especially if you're somebody who's from Africa. But can you see immediately there is a racial imposition that's put on those who go to heaven or hell. Let's go on to verse 46. But for him who fears the standing before his Lord, there will be 2 gardens. What about these gardens? Well, when you get to that, you see on verse 54, reclining upon the couches lined with silk brocade in this garden, and the fruits of 2 gardens will be near at hand. Verse 56, wherein both will be kasirat uttarf. Now, what does that mean? According to al-Hilali and Khan, that means chaste female wives, restraining their glances, desiring none except their husbands. And then the Quran continues, with whom no man or jinni has had tamth. And tamth would be before them. Tamth would be who has not had a sexual intercourse before them. So, or opening of their hymens, according to al-Hilali and Khan. So these are virginal women who are waiting upon their, well, they're not their husbands. These are men. These are virginal women. It doesn't say how many. You have to go to the traditions, to the hadith, to know that these would be 72 for each man. But in the Quran, it doesn't give you any number. So you can see it's a paradise where there are women waiting upon their men. Now, if there is 72 for every man, that contradicts what we just did about 2 or 3 minutes ago, which says the majority of those in paradise will be men. How could the majority be men if every man has 72 virgins waiting upon them? That's a contradiction. I'll let you all try to figure that one out. Let's continue on what it says about this paradise. Verse 70, therein will be the Qairatun Hisan. These are fair, good, and beautiful looking women. Verse 72, they are known as hur. So what are hur? Well, that's actually taken from the Persian. And the hur are beautiful, fair females guarded in pavilions. So these are virginal females. That's an idea that's been derived and borrowed from the Sassanids, from exactly Zoroastrianism, cutting down on verse 74, with whom no man or jinni has had tamth before him. In other words, had sexual intercourse. So these are virginal women who are waiting upon the men. So that's 55. Can you see? Are you getting the idea of what we're talking about? These are men who go to heaven. They have these numerous women who are waiting upon them on couches. They are virginal women who remain virginal, I guess. Then on chapter 56, then, verse 12, in gardens of delight. So this is a very carnal paradise. You're trying to get that, you're getting that idea already. Verse 15, they will be on thrones woven with gold and precious stones. 16, reclining thereon face to face. I assume face to face, either with the men and the women. Verse 17, immortal boys will go around them. Boys, immortal boys. So there's the young boys who are waiting upon these men. With cups and jugs and glass of flowing wine in verse 18. And then verse 19, wherefrom they will get neither any aching of the head nor any intoxication, yet they have all these cups of wine that do not intoxicate. I guess that's grape juice. Fascinating, because they're not permitted to touch wine on earth. No Muslim is permitted to touch wine because it's the creation of Satan. So here, what they cannot touch on earth, they're going to have plentiful in heaven. And what's fascinating is when you look at this, you see that there's contradiction after contradiction. We've seen the contradiction with the numbers in both of heaven and hell. There's also a contradiction of why is it you have all these women waiting upon you when here on earth you can't even see them. You hide them and cover them up, completely covered up. And if they are covered up, then the question is, then this seems to be a seeming contradiction as well. Because why would you cover them up here so their faces are not visible? And chapter 33, verse 59, it says very clearly that the women are to be completely covered, not just the wives of the prophet. Like I've heard many Muslims say, all believing women are to be completely covered up except for their eyes. Yet when you get to heaven, these women will be waiting upon them. So that which they're not permitted on earth, they're permitted in abundance in paradise. Then we get to verse 35 here on chapter 56, and it says, "Verily, we have created them maidens of special creation." For verse 36, and what is this special creation? "And made them virgins." Now, most Muslims I've talked to say that that means that they are perpetually virgin. Doesn't matter how many times you have sex with them, they're always a virgin. How you do that, I don't know. What does this tell you? Is that relevant for today? This sounds like a very carnal paradise. This sounds like a paradise that is for a very Arab mindset, possibly a 7th century Arab mindset. But it sounds like a paradise that they would have been very pleasurable or exciting for men of that age in the 7th century. But that is not relevant for today. That is not a paradise we have. When you come to Revelations chapter 21, in Revelations 21, one of the beautiful things I love about our Bible, because in our scriptures it says, starting with verse 3, "And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God." Verse 4, "He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." Ooh, when you look at that, what a contrast in our Bible versus the Quran. When you look at the Bible versus the Quran, folks, you decide which is more relevant for today. I would suggest the Bible is a lot more relevant. What's fascinating to me is that in the Bible, it's very clear that God's going to be with us. In the Bible, we're going to be in the presence of God. And that's why when you look at these, taking both these references, one in chapter 55 and chapter 56 of the Quran, the other one in Revelations chapter 21, and you do a contrast just between these two revelations. One is a very carnal paradise, that's the Quranic paradise, and the other is a very personal paradise where we are in relationship with our God. Remember at the very beginning, we were in relationship with God. In chapter 3 of Genesis, verse 8 and 9, God was walking and talking in the cool of the day. Well, we're coming back to that again. That's the paradise I can't wait for, and that's the paradise I offer you, and that's the paradise that we're all going to go to if you love Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. This is Jay here in Torquay in Paignton, on the shore looking at these boats. There's a kayak about ready to go out. You can see another motorboat heading out towards the sea. Just a beautiful, beautiful day. It's a bank holiday, so we're having lots of people come down here. It's just been great to be here and to not only enjoy a little bit of God's creation, but also talk about what's waiting for us.